that. So as I was saying, this is normally a episode of Robots Roundtable, which has now shifted into what I'm calling the Podcast Professor, because myself and the other hosts on the Robots Radio Network have been doing well with our shows. We launched our shows. I launched my show back in my first show. Well, not my first show. My first successful show, I should say, back in January. I started the Fallout Lorecast, and I feel like I figured out the system. And one of the things I've done as I've grown the Robots Radio network of podcasts is when I bring on new podcasts onto the show, I give them an audit. I take them through an entire, it's like a 9-page document I do. It's the kind of thing that you would spend thousands of dollars for a marketing firm to present to you. And so it's worth my time to do it, to put it together, because the shows that I bring on the network, I want to be as good as they possibly can. And in doing this work, working for a marketing firm, having some successful shows myself, I've learned a lot about what works and what doesn't, because I, as you guys know from tuning into my streams and just listening to the show, I am not afraid to just try stuff and see what happens. And as soon as I realize that something isn't working or something is working, then I either double down on it or I get rid of it. So I've learned a lot. Let's just say it that way. I've learned a lot. So this episode, because merchandise, yay, maybe. I don't know what that says, what that means, Pie Man. All right, so because the other hosts weren't able to join me for the show today, I thought I would open it up and do a Q&A episode with you guys, because I get a lot of questions. I get lots of questions about what to do with podcasts, how to start podcasts, how to market the podcasts, what content you should do, and those kinds of things. So I have some questions that we pulled from some of you guys, and a lot of you are in the Twitch stream right now or on YouTube watching. And these questions I'm going to start with, and I will address each in turn. And then once I get through the questions that were already sent, then feel free to send some questions to me in chat, and I will address those questions as well. I have a feeling some of the stuff I'm going to go through in answering these questions will both answer questions and probably raise some other questions. So that's going to be the format. So here we go. Lex actually sent a few different questions in Discord. And the first question, and this is a good question to address when you were first starting out, because when I started podcasting 3 or 4 years ago, I started with a Dungeons and Dragons show. I had no idea what it would cost. And the question here is, how much does podcasting usually cost? So the cost of podcasting all comes down to a number of things that you need in order to get off the ground. The biggest thing used to be hosting. You used to be able to, or used to have to, host your show on either an expensive podcast host like Blueberry, or there's a number of other ones. There's some really big ones out there that cost upwards of $100 a year or more, depending on your expected volume of downloads. And that was, for some people, $100. You just don't always have $100 to throw at something that you don't know is going to work. The benefit of going with somebody like Anchor right now is that you can do it for free. Now, that opens up some other conversations. Spotify has purchased Anchor. Spotify might be doing things with Anchor or might not. So make sure you back up your content so you can re-release it if for some reason Anchor goes away, because it's a free platform. But for right now, if you're starting out a new show, remove that cost. Get rid of that $100 extra cost. Don't try to host it through your website. That is another option, but it will buckle down the website with traffic from people listening to the shows rather than people going to your website for what the website is actually for. So I wouldn't recommend that as either. So start with something like Anchor, get some shows out there, see if that's working, and if you decide to move to another location, you can always do that. You can always transfer your show from one place to another. So to get back to the question, cost, number one thing, hosting. If you go with somebody like Anchor, it's free. So there's the benefit of that. So get rid of that right away. 2, your equipment. Your equipment is going to be either free because you already have the equipment, or you're going to have to invest in it. Equipment is a tricky topic, I guess we could say, because if you're going with something you already have, if you're going with a headset, and mine's over on the shelf over there, then you already have a headset, but chances are your gaming headset or your VoIP headset or whatever it is that you happen to have in your home or at work that you can bring home to use is probably not the highest quality. It's probably not the thing that you really absolutely want to use for a podcast. Because as we get into stuff later with some of the other questions, the quality of your show is extremely important, especially in 2019. So you can start with just your phone or just a headset. But I would recommend, if you get any source of income that you can invest in a microphone, in just whatever microphone will be better than the one on your headset, that is an extremely good place to put your money into. Getting off the ground with it, you can start with something like a Blue Yeti. That's how I started. And if you mix it well and you record in a room without too much echo, because the Blue Yeti will pick up sound from far away, then you can get away with that. That's on sale, $60, $80, $100 normally, somewhere in that range. If you want to go a little bit more, all you really need is something like this Rode that I have right here. This is my Rode Podcaster USB microphone. I do not use anything more complex than a USB microphone, because everything I'm able to do with my voice to maximize the quality of my voice, I can do in post. So, and this is what it looks like without the little fuzzy top pop filter thing. So this is it. This is it. It plugs directly into your PC. It even has a headphone out. And if I put my headphones on right now, I would be able to hear my own voice in my head in real time with no delay, which is super great and super useful, especially when you're working on enunciation and things like that. So this microphone runs more in the 150, 160 range, if I recall correctly, 180 maybe. It's a bit more expensive, so I wouldn't recommend it as a starter microphone if you're not committing to that. But Blue Yeti would be great. It sounds great, especially if you speak close to it. It'll pick you up far away. This one dies off far away, but if you speak close to it, it'll work great. So the other costs involve the software that you would need to use in order to edit down your podcast. I have had the best experience learning Adobe software because of it's complex, it's hard, and it's expensive. And I've been fortunate to work for a company where I have a license through the company, so I don't actually have to pay for it yet. At some point, hopefully, things continue to take off, I'll leave the company, be able to do this full time, and then I'll have to pay for my own subscription. But if you can get a subscription to Adobe, or somebody else who has one and they can share a login, you can do it that way too. Audacity, however, Durka mentions here in chat, Audacity is where I started. I used Audacity at first. It is absolutely free. It is easy to use. There are all sorts of tutorials all over the internet on how to maximize your audio, how to balance audio, how to compress your voice. Vocal compression and vocal EQ is extremely important. We all have different voices. We all have different pitches in our voices. For example, my voice is best balanced with a little bit of a tweak up in the 100 megahertz range, and then another tweak up at the very end, the very highest notes of the spectrum, so you can hear the enunciation, the sounds in my voice. But you don't want to overdo it. A lot of people will push that too far, and then they sound like this, and it just messes it up. So just a little bit of stuff on that. I know I touched on a number of things. I believe that's the only real cost, though. So really just get yourself a microphone. Put as much into a microphone as you can at first. Use Anchor and use Audacity, and then you will have absolutely, sounds like Elvis, absolutely the best experience you can from a cost perspective. So thank you, Lex, for that question. That's actually a very good question. It touches on a number of other things, and you'll notice that a lot of the information about podcasting often does touch on multiple other things. So, because there's a lot going on there. So, another general question from Lex: what's the best way to start a podcast? That's how I would start from a financial and from an equipment standpoint like that. So that kind of answers it too. There are some other questions about starting a podcast that we'll address in a little bit. This question is really interesting. Lex's third question is competition good or bad? This is a very interesting question because competition, by default, if you are producing a product and you are trying to get it out into the world, the gut instinct is that competition is bad, that you do not want somebody else, competing with you, taking away your listeners, taking away people who will purchase your product. Regarding, depending on how you define what it is that you're producing, right? My belief is if you are committed to making the absolute best content you can and doing it better than anyone else and continually growing and getting better at that, then competition is ultimately good. So if we look at it from the perspective of how do you deal with competition, and well, I don't want to go into that just yet. Here's where I want to go with this. The benefits of competition are more awareness. This is a major marketing thing. So if you think of it from a marketing funnel standpoint, at the very top of the funnel is a very large group of people, and above the funnel is everybody. And when you finally get people into the top of that funnel, you're hitting awareness. You're hitting people in the world who know that there are podcasts at all. People in the world who know that you have a podcast and that it might be about a certain thing. If there is competition around your specific space, then there will be more awareness. The top of that funnel is bigger. So that's good. You want lots of people looking for podcasts because then potentially they will find yours and move down the funnel till the point where they actually listen and they become regular listeners. So from that perspective, it's good. The other thing I think is good about competition in the podcasting space is that in most areas, when it comes to podcasting, it's very much a community. It's people who are interested in doing things together, and it's very much a hobby space. There are very, very few people who can do this as a full-time thing and make enough money on ads or on patrons and those kinds of things to make it a full-time thing. So it's a hobbyist's realm. I don't know the right word for that. It's a hobbyist area, and hobbyists love to meet other hobbyists, to be around people who do the same things they do and love the things that they do. So competition in general works well from that perspective. The other thing you want to consider with competition, though, is that there is the potential, if you are doing something that isn't as good as everyone else, that the listeners who find your show will be turned off because somebody else set the bar up here, and when they found your show, it was down here. And that's just not going to be good enough. And so you need to raise the bar until you are at this level. Now, let's talk about what sets that bar, because that's also important. What sets that bar is minimal good quality audio. As long as their audio isn't a problem, then you're okay. The audio can't turn people away. It has to be good enough for people to not be bothered by it. Good audio is a bonus, but okay audio, especially at the beginning, good enough. The next piece is content. Is the content of your show on par or better than the other shows? Is it good? Yes, then you're good. The third piece of this is the presentation of that content. Is your content presented more succinctly, more interestingly, more entertainingly, with less filler and more actual content than the competition? Now you're above the competition. So if you can do each of those things even to the competition and do one of those things better, then you are now better than the competition. The trick with this is being able to be objective about it, which is very hard. It's very, very hard to look at your own creation and understand from the audience's perspective what you're actually looking at. That's why it's good to ask the audience, ask for reviews, get honest opinions from people. Be willing to, you're putting yourself out there anyway. People are going to think and react the way they're going to think and react. just because they don't tell you something doesn't mean that they don't already have that opinion. So put your pride away and be open to all opinions, and then just be okay with changing things. This isn't the end of the story. And the only way that you can fail at this is by letting those opinions bother you from like a personal standpoint. So very good question. Is competition good or bad? I hope I answered that in a way, Lex, that was, that made sense. I know, like I mentioned, a lot of these things each of these areas touches on other areas. So competition in regard to quality is a very interesting dynamic. So Durka has a question for us. Editing skills, give some pointers and advice to help build quality. Okay, so editing skills. Very good question. The way you edit your show will set a specific level of quality. We're talking about those 3 levers, right? Quality lever. You've got good microphones, you're good. The next part is editing. So if you can edit your show in a way that takes out, 1, the ums and the ahs, the delivery of your voice. There are things in your delivery that you can't edit out. Your enunciation, the way that you present words, how you inflect, how you raise your voice when it's important and lower your voice when you're really trying to make a point. Things like that. That takes practice. You can't edit that stuff out. But you can edit out long pauses, and you can edit out the ums and uhs. And over time, by specifically going through and spending the time on the podcast to edit those things out, you're going to realize how annoying that is and how much time that takes. And you will learn to practice not saying ums and uhs and leaving empty spaces. It's something that takes a lot of time and a lot of practice, but you can totally do. So tip 1, listen back through everything. Remove the ums and the uhs, right? You'll get better at it. Tip 2, when it comes to editing, you want to make sure that your delivery of the content on the show flows and makes sense, and that some things blend together and some things have distinct cuts. This is what I mean. So, for example, if you have intro music, and if you listen to any of my shows, not all of them, but if you listen to something like the Fallout Lorecast and the Elder Scrolls Lorecast, there's the intro section, there's the music with the voice, the announcement of the name of the show comes at a climax in the music, so it sounds important. Then there's my voice explaining in 1 sentence exactly what the show is about. So if it's your first time listening, you know, oh, this is what I'm getting. And then the music trails off, and I create a decline in the music that looks kind of like a ramp down. And about halfway down that ramp is where I insert my myself saying the first thing that I'm going to say in the first actual section of the content of the show. Whether that's a, hey, welcome everybody, or that's I'm doing like a cold open and I'm getting right into the topic because it's a cool topic. You know, sometimes I'll put the intro stuff later, where I actually introduce myself as myself. And Durka follows up here with, how long should the music be? An intro for your podcast should be at the most like 10, 15 seconds long. People want to get to the content. You don't need to rock out with a whole 3-minute song at the beginning. They're not interested in listening to a 3-minute song. They're interested in hearing what you have to say about that episode, especially after they listen to like 50, 100 of the same podcast episodes. They've heard that intro how many times? They're going to skip over it. So be succinct, put the music in, fade it out. Some podcasts like to play music behind all the talking, like I'm doing right now. I've got some music playing in the background as I talk to you guys. This works better on Twitch. This is a Twitch thing because it helps fill the empty space. On a podcast, the whole focus is your voice, and your voice should constantly be going when talking and sharing things and the clips that you're putting in the show. So you don't need music behind it necessarily. If you do put music or something behind your voice, make sure it's very low. I would drop it to, here, I'm going to play with the levels here. I would drop it to a level of about like this. You guys can probably barely hear it right now. So on Twitch, things work a little bit differently. So I'm going to leave the music in and go from there. What's funny is, and I just realized this, I'm going to take this audio from this episode and I'm going to upload it as the podcast version of this episode. And it's going to have music behind it the whole time because I didn't think about that when I set up the Twitch feed. So, oh man. So the irony here is amazing. Great irony. I'm going to turn it down a little bit for the rest of the show. All right. So, very good question. Other pointers to editing. Learn to use the tools. Learn to use cuts, drags, blends. And like I mentioned earlier, there are a ton of really, really good tutorial videos out there. So if you have a question about how to do something, look it up. And if you're still kind of new to the editing process, look up a general how-to guide for podcasters. In fact, I should put one together. I think that would be really, really helpful. So look that up. Spend your time in your extra time, on your downtime at work, at lunch, when you're sitting on your phone, in the evenings, if you're just laying in your bed trying to get to sleep and you're just on your phone or whatever, use that time. There's lots of in-between time in your day to learn something else, to stick it into your brain in order to, use it later. I hope I answered that question well, Durka. All right, so let's move on to the next one. We have one from Ped. Hey, Ped. It might be neat to hear about your views on networking and working with other creators and maybe how to work with guests remotely. All right, so two different questions. One, networking and working with creators. So when it comes to networking and working with creators, and you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to turn this off, actually. Bye-bye, background music. We'll make the rest of the podcast just me. Yeah, good question. So networking and working with creators. I mentioned before that the podcast space is full of people who really want to nerd out about the things that they like. That's most of the time why they're doing a podcast, is because they have an interest in things and they want to find other people who are interested in those things as listeners and as co-creators. That's one of the greatest joys that I've had in being able to do my shows, is in working with other people. Here's the thing. Your first instinct will be, oh man, I've listened to this other show for years. I feel like I really know the people on that show. Like they're my friends, but they don't know me. I know they don't me. I listen to them. I know they don't know me. I can't just shoot them an email or try to contact them. I'm just going to fanboy or fangirl out or whatever, and this is going to be bad. Put that on the back burner. You are now a content creator. They are a content creator. You are equals. They may have been doing it longer and have more success, but you are also a content creator. Start with that. The next thing I would do is reach out to them on social media first. And this advice goes well for anybody who's creating content. Make friends with these people. Get your name in front of them. Respond to their tweets. Reshare their tweets. Respond to their other social media posts. If they stream, if they have live videos, be present in their live streams and their live videos. Get to know them on a little bit more personal level. That's the wonderful thing about the internet right now, is that we have this ability to connect with each other in a way that is totally open and welcome, especially if it's positive and it's about the things that we all care about. Start with that. Don't, on the other hand, make it look like you're only being friends with them because you're trying to get something from them. That is absolutely the wrong way to do it. Come at it from the perspective of, I am always willing to give you more than I would ever ask. So that leads into our second point on that one. When reaching out to the content creator, so let's say you've spent a few weeks getting to know them, they've responded to some of your posts, things like that. They'll probably recognize who you are. That's when you reach out and you say, hey, I really love your show. I would love to help promote your show. Would you like to come guest on my show? Start with that, because you are offering them something. You're giving them another way to share the content that they are already care about and is important to them. Give them that first. On the back end, they may note that they guested on your show, on one of their future podcasts, on social media. They might reshare your tweets. They may not. That might not happen either. but at least it gives you the opportunity to move that relationship forward. If they say yes, and almost 100% of the time, the other creators that I've reached out to will say yes because they want to be involved. They want to be on other people's shows and they want to do fun stuff. That's when you bring them on, you get to know them, you have a fun conversation with them, you make it about them. And then you say, thank you, that was so much fun. Thanks for being on my show. And at the end of the recording is where you will say something like, hey, if ever there's any opportunity in the future and you need a guest from your show, I would love to be on to talk about some of the stuff that we talked about today. They know exactly what they're able to get to use you for on their show. They already feel comfortable with you. They already know a little bit about who you are. And you're not making it, do not set your expectations. You're making it a potential offer to solve a potential problem that they might have. You're not saying, hey, can I be on your show? You're not saying that. You're saying, if it would be beneficial to you, I would love to guest on your show sometime. If not, that's totally cool too. That's the way you present it. And then you maintain a relationship because you just made a friend. So be friends. Respond to their posts. Be active in social media with them still. Have them guest a second time. The more you can get to know people on a friend level, the more you're going to be able to promote each other. So that would be my first recommendation on networking with other people in the age of the internet in 2019 and probably the next few years for sure. From a perspective of how to work with guests remotely, the easiest method that I have found is using Discord and recording with the Craig bot on Discord. The benefit of networking with other podcasters is that chances are they have a setup, they have a computer, they have software, they can record their own voice, and you can both record locally, and then you will edit it later and combine it together. So I would do both. I wouldn't just rely on one source, because if something craps out and you just spend an hour and a half interviewing somebody, it's gone. You can't get it back. It's gone. So record locally and use Craig. This is a rule that I've broken before because sometimes I like to live on the edge, and I just have relied on Craig before, and I've been fortunate, but there have definitely been times where the app is messed up and it's gone away. And I've had to rely on a backup or like a Twitch stream even to pull the audio from. So that's a very, very good question. Anchor isn't good with that. What do you mean by Anchor isn't good with that? And I'm going to let you answer that question as we move to the next one. Soul writes, mainly what Derek asked, but also, what's the best way to get the word out? This is absolutely what this show was going to be about before I realized that none of the other hosts could be on the episode. Networking and getting the word out. So I've got some tips around that because there are definitely things that work and definitely things that don't work. My biggest... okay, so before I get into this, I'm going to follow up with Soul's other question. The website doesn't let you record other people. That's why I wouldn't record directly to the website. I would record to your own computer. And Anchor allows you to do that, but I would consider that an option that allows you to get used to podcasting and used to recording yourself. The audio quality isn't the best. You can hear it in some of my episodes. If you listen to some of the ads, you hear my voice through the recording directly to the website, because that's the way I recorded those ads, because it was an ad and I just wanted to get it done. If you listen to the actual show content, you will hear me recording through same mic, but on my own software and post-producing it and making sure it sounds really, really good, and it's not streaming through the internet. So I would recommend record locally and combine the audio, and then export the audio and upload it to Anchor or whoever your host is. You can do that with your podcast guests and people like that. I would recommend doing that even on your shows without guests, because it will sound better. In the long run, it will sound better. So if you can make that switch, it takes some learning, but I would do that. So back to the other question. Best way to get the word out. Best way to get the word out. So, so I hope you guys understand that what you're getting here is a lot of the details that I go through, not everything, but a lot of the details that I go through in my audits and the recommendations I make to the other shows on the network. And one of these days, I'm going to put together an ebook, and I'll put it online, and it will have in order all the things that you need to know, all the things that you need to do in order to maximize your potential for success. Nobody can guarantee that you're going to be successful, but you can try to check all the boxes. You can give yourself the absolute best chance of it. So how do you get the word out? there's a whole world of people out there. There's a section of those people who will be interested in your content, especially if it's getting better and you're doing a good job and it meets all those criteria that I was mentioning earlier. So with that confidence, you need to go into the world. Now, how does this work? Human nature is such that if you go up to somebody and you say, hey, do this thing, most people will respond with, why? Or no. Like, very few people will just go, okay, and just do it. Same thing happens on social media and anywhere that you can, for free, get word out about your show. So, step one, maximize, and I'm a very large proponent of this, maximize other platforms other than podcasts to get awareness out. Let's talk about that. Awareness. Very top of the funnel. So you're thinking, okay, I'm going to tweet stuff out. I'm going to put things up on, Instagram, whatever. Great. But the way you do that has to fulfill a need in your potential audience. So let's talk about your potential audience because we have to start there. Who is going to be interested in your show? And I don't just mean who from a general perspective. If I was to start a podcast today about game previews, game preview podcast, and I just wanted to do every episode was going to be about a different game that's about to come out sometime in the next 6 months to a year and everything that we know about it so we can get excited about it. That could be a cool show, right? Somebody's going to be interested in that. What is important to that audience and who is that audience? And don't just say, okay, well, people who like video games. Well, yes, people who like video games, but that's very broad. We need to take that and we need to narrow it down a step. Okay, so people who like video games, who listen to podcasts. That's a good one. People who like video games, who also listen to podcasts, who are what age demographic? Well, let's think about this. What age demographic is the most interested in a large variety of games that are about to come out? 15-year-olds? Probably not. They probably have a few games that they really, really love, and they don't have the money to just buy every new game that comes out. Who has the money to try out every new game that comes out? Established adults. People post-college with good careers and who are financially stable. So now you're talking, and becoming financially stable in today's world usually doesn't happen by 22, 23. Normally it's by your later 20s, by the time you actually have gotten into a position where you are making enough money to have the ability to spend more. So late 20s through 40s, because the average age of a gamer is probably something like 45 at this point. It's different than a lot of people would expect. But that audience is a great audience. They have money to spend. They have a lot of interest in these things. They've grown up with video games. Yeah, I'm 40 years old. I played Atari games with my dad before I can remember playing Atari games with my dad, because we had an Atari in the house because he wanted to play Pac-Man. I grew up with a Nintendo, a Super Nintendo. That's my age group. So let's narrow it down. So we've got gamers who listen to podcasts, who are established adults. But what else? Is there anything else? Can we give that person a name? Well, what if the guy's name is, what's the name of somebody who was born who's 30 years old? Guy's name is, we'll go with Derek. The guy's name is Derek, and he's single, but he's been dating a girl for a long time. She's into games too, and he's got a pretty good job as an engineer making some good money. That's your demographic. That's your persona. What would that guy want in his Twitter feed? Well, I can tell you what he doesn't want. He doesn't want a bunch of shows he doesn't already care about saying, hey, listen to my show, because it doesn't work. Bruce, we'll go with Bruce. What he does want, we've already established what he's interested in. He is interested in information about upcoming games because he loves to just try out new games all the time. He's got the money for it. So share that information in your Twitter feed and do it in a way that's more interesting and better than other people. Does that make sense? So scan news for games coming out and put it in your Twitter feed. And don't just retweet it. Comment on it. Show that you have insight into this topic in a way that's beneficial to Bruce or Derek. That's the way you use social media. Take the content, make sure that you're giving your audience something that would be harder for them to get otherwise, and that you're adding your own spin on it. Then, when finally he sees a notice, and make that most of your content, by the way. That's how I started the Fallout Lorecast. I started back in December of last year with a Twitter account. And on that Twitter account, before I even decided to do a podcast, I just wanted to see if I could grow it on an audience. And this is one of the things I've mentioned to you guys. I wanted to build a community. So I thought, okay, well, Fallout's out. Fallout 76 is out. How do I connect with this community? Well, you know what I'll do? I will find facts about Fallout, and I will start posting them every day on this Twitter feed, and we'll see what happens. And you know what? I discovered a Fallout community that was awesome and positive, which was the opposite of what the news was at the time. And people very, very quickly followed the account because they knew exactly what they were getting. And once I established about 200 followers, which happened within just a few weeks, I was able to push out the first episode of the show because I decided at that point, you know what? I should do a show about this kind of stuff. I pushed out the first episode of the show, and I think I probably hit something like 50 downloads that very first week on the first episode of the show. That's huge. There's a lot of indie podcasts that regularly get 50 episodes at all for every episode that comes out. And it's because I primed the audience, and I only did it through one source. Had I been doing that on Instagram, I probably would have doubled that output. If I was doing it on a Facebook account as well, I might have doubled that output. So that's how you build an audience from a social media perspective. The other way is to tap into, so remember we talked about categories, people who like games, people who also listen to podcasts. That audience is part of your target demographic. How do you reach people who are already listening to podcasts? Get on other podcasts. Find other shows and guest on them as much as you possibly can. How do you do that? I mentioned it before. You reach out, you make friends, you reach out, you invite one of their hosts on your show, and you see if they'll return the favor. Try and do that. If you can guest on another show every week for the next 6 months, and you are entertaining, you are charismatic, you speak clearly and knowledgeably about the things that you're on there to talk about, then some of that audience will follow you back to your show because they'll go, you know what? I like that person. I want to hear more about what they have to say. I'm going to go check out their show. This is one of the reasons why the McElroys, my brother and me, the Adventure Zone, those shows, the McElroy brothers, they took off. I started listening to their show. I knew who they were because I paid attention to Polygon and gaming news, and I knew who Justin was, and I didn't know who Travis or Griffin were yet. And because I paid attention to those gaming sites and I listened to some of their podcasts, I heard Justin guesting on some of the podcasts talking up my brother and me. This was like back in 2009, maybe 2011, whenever they started. And if I think back to it, they spent a good portion of that first year guesting on other shows because they're three funny guys and their show's a comedy show, and they would guest on the shows. They would be charming. They would be funny. And yeah, it's an old show now. And they are now doing multiple shows and living off of podcast money and live events. That's what they do. They do it for a living. And it's because they built this audience and they did it in the right way. They gave people the content first, and then the people came to them second. So I hope that's helpful. Does that answer your question, Saul? Anybody else have any thoughts or questions about that? While I scroll back through to some other questions. Here's a good question from Nest. Nest writes, fiction-wise, how do you find motivation to be creative? Like, how do you stick with the same narrative without getting bored? That is also a great question. Thank you so much, Nest. So how do you continue to be creative? Okay, so the way I do it is when I get bored, and this is an interesting way to think of it. My two primary shows, the Fallout Lorecast and the Elder Scrolls Lorecast, are about very dry material, lore. They're about this happened here, this person did this, then this event happened. And it could be the most dry and boring subject you could possibly do. Yeah, you like the games, but if you present it like a timeline, that's super boring. And sometimes, and I've mentioned this before, on streams and podcasts and things like that, my attention changes. I love playing lots of different games. I love diving into new things. And sometimes there are weeks that go by where I'm like, I got to talk about Fallout again. Got to talk about Elder Scrolls again. And I have to remind myself, no, that's a thing you love. So first of all, you love it. So you're going to have fun. Even if you don't feel like it right now, you're going to have fun. And two, if I'm bored, then my audience is definitely bored. So that's when I get silly, to be honest. That's where working in BuddyBot and the old man voices came in, is because if it feels stale to me and I'm getting ready to make something, or at least the idea of the next show feels stale to me, then I need to make it not feel stale to me. I need to do something that I'm going to have fun doing. So I either dive into a topic that I really would rather be talking about that week. That's part of why I don't post a schedule ahead of time, because some days I get to sit down and record and I go, I'm not feeling this one as much. It might be a great topic. People may have asked for it, but personally, I'm not going to do as good of a job with it unless I'm feeling it. So I will look up another topic and then I'll go, oh yeah, this thing. I love this thing. I want to know more about that thing. And then I'll research that other thing. So it keeps the enjoyment going. If I'm having fun, then you guys are having fun. If I'm not, nobody else is going to listen. So also the format of the show can be changed. This is one of the wonderful things about creating a show. It's also one of the wonderful things about creating a pattern and then breaking the pattern. Nobody wants chaos. Nobody wants every episode to be absolutely different and not know what to expect. That's too much. But if you establish a pattern around of like a dozen episodes, and then all of a sudden you break that pattern, that stands out. And that's fun. And it gives you the opportunity to do something different. And you can draw from other creative sources. I listen to a lot of shows. I listen to a lot of podcasts. I watch a lot of YouTube videos. I watch a lot of streamers. If somebody's doing something that triggers something in my mind and makes me think, you could do that, but you could do it in this way. And then all of a sudden it's my own. I've taken that idea and I've worked it into my show, and I've had the fun of trying to do it and put it together. And I've also had the fun of proving to myself that there's something else I can do that I didn't think about before. And sometimes those ideas become mainstays of the show. The robot voice and the old man in both of my shows were there from the beginning because I needed an announcer voice to introduce the show, and I didn't want it to be my voice. So I had to make up a voice. I didn't have another voice. I could have paid for a voice actor, but instead I decided, you know what? I can do funny voices. I can also use the software that I have, and I know how to change it and affect the sound. So why don't I create my own character that can make an announcement? And I was actually very, very hesitant to work the old man into the Elder Scrolls Lorecast, but I think he's one of my favorite characters. He is absolutely hilarious to me because he's just weird and ridiculous. So I hope that answers the question, Nest. That's Memory Box. Welcome to the stream, buddy. Yeah, we're talking podcasts, podcast advice. So let's see. We've got another one from Tech. I don't want to be dark, but what would happen to the podcast or the network if you die or something that makes it so you can't speak? So if something were to happen that I couldn't do what I do, and I've thought about this. The network could go on, to be honest. The network could absolutely go on. It's in its infancy still. So from like a business perspective, technically, things would kind of dissolve. But I wouldn't be surprised if some of the other hosts on the network weren't to continue to band together and keep it going under their own business. That totally makes sense. From perspective of me losing my voice or having medical issues or getting hit by a bus or something like that, then yeah, my shows probably would be done. But I have had the thought before, if I were to really get a show going and I needed to move on to something else, then I've already set a template for what I want the show to be like, and to be able to hire a host to take my place and do the show, or hire writers that can do something very similar. Now, it'll never be exactly the same, but I've created a standard and I've created a method, and you can define, this is the way I write the content. This is the way I present the content. This is the way I talk about the content. And you can hire people to do those things. It is possible. You can train people up. So I have thought about that before. I think it would be really kind of interesting to get some podcasts going that weren't as dependent on me as the host. And then at some point work in a co-host, and then at some point work my way out of it in order to have established a show for somebody else. I think that's a totally viable thing. I don't know of many shows that do that, but it is definitely an idea that I've considered. So thank you for that question, Tech. Very, very good question. All right. So I think I'm through all of the questions that were already in the mix, and we've been going for, 50 minutes or so. Anybody in chat? I know some of you guys were posting some questions up above. I'm kind of scrolling through chat here to see if there's anything else. I don't see anything off the top of my head. So if you guys have any other questions, go ahead and drop them in chat. Let's see, anything else about any of the topics that I already brought up that I would want to bring back up? Back to editing skills. Absolutely. I cannot recommend this enough. Record to a program, or record your voice, put it in a program, blend it together. You want to make sure that your voices start and are matched up correctly. The best way I have found to do it is actually very rudimentary. You count to 3 and then you clap, and you do it while you're chatting with the other person through like Discord or whatever. And you'll go 1, 2, 3, and then you do it again. And you sync the claps in the software, so you know exactly where your voice is. And you may even want to do it later on too, because for some reason, different recording platforms, I think it's because they track time differently, will get out of sync as the program goes on. So you can always resync it later, like cut and resync. So you want to make sure that that's happening, because you don't want weird delays between when you say something and the other person responds, or we're talking over each other a little bit, if possible. The other thing that I would really recommend would be using compression, normalization, and in some cases, especially when it comes to something like a Blue Yeti will pick up. So this microphone right here picks up everything right here really, really well. And if you hear me back here, see, I'm still talking at the same volume, but I'm much quieter. And it's actually, this is all being compressed through Twitch as well. So that's louder than it would have been if this was just a pure signal. But if I stop talking, you guys can't hear the buzz of my computer right here next to me. You can't hear it. It's 3 feet away, but you can't hear it. If I had a Blue Yeti right here, it would pick that up. And so if you're mixing down your podcast, your vocal performance for your podcast, I would very highly recommend finding some sort of way to filter out the background noise before compressing, because that noise will only get louder. And there are ways of doing that with Audacity and other programs as well. Also, you can create a noise gate that if the volume isn't more than a certain decibel range, it won't record that volume. That's trickier because sometimes it doesn't turn on and off fast enough, and it'll make ear sound like that, like it'll catch it too late when it gets loud. So there you go. Nest has another question here. How much of your time Nest, sorry. This is I guess you weren't in the stream yet. This is a Rode Podcaster USB. You don't even need an XLR with a mixer and all those kinds of things. And I get a lot of compliments all the time about the sound quality of my shows. And I do it through a USB mic because I can do all the editing on the back end. If you're going for the absolute highest bar, you're going to want a legitimate XLR mic through a mixing board and all that stuff. But the cost is significantly more. There's a lot more to learn about how to do that. So I would start out with this. And to be honest, I've upgraded my camera. I've upgraded a number of other things I use. I have a Stream Deck because it helps automate things, but I haven't upgraded this mic, and I've had it since March. And I don't feel like I need to. I feel like this is good enough for what I need to do. So I'm keeping it. All right. So back to the question. How much of your time does one podcast, for example, one of the Lorecast episodes, take? How long does it take to produce one average length episode? So when I first started podcasting, it would take me the amount of time it takes to record an episode. So let's just go with an hour because it's an easy number. Let's say I record an hour-long episode. You've got the 1 hour to record, right? Then you have to listen back through the entire episode and edit out all the ums and uhs, move things around, delete stuff you don't want to be in the episode, re-record things if you need to kind of piece them in because you're like, I forgot to mention this thing. You got to do that part of it. That part of it, most of the time when I first started, would take, if the main recording was an hour, it might take me 2 more hours. So that's 3 hours of work for 1 hour long episode. Some people take way longer with their editing. Some people take shorter with their editing because they're either better at it or, they're just quicker at doing it. Right now, my method, and I think what I will do in future weeks when I get some more time, is stream myself recording an episode. And I think you guys are going to get a kick out of it because I have a method that works for me that I think a lot of podcasters don't use. And because I'm a one-person show, I can record and edit at the same time. And what I do is I get the content ready that I want. So I do my research. I pull out quotes that I want to use. I pull out notes that I want to make. I get some rough ideas around where I'm going. And I find that I do a pretty good job thinking on the fly. When I challenge myself to be in the zone and thinking about things, that's where I will oftentimes get my best ideas. So I don't try to overthink it ahead of time. I just get the bare bones of what I need. I put it up on the screen. Then I hit record. And I go through my head. How am I going to lay out this episode? I think I'm going to have this funny thing at the beginning, or I'm going to use this clip at the beginning. I'm going to talk about these points through here. I'm going to do the housekeeping stuff at the end. I'm going to do the little ending fun thing down here. Okay, I've got the general flow. It's usually about the same flow. Then I will start recording. Chances are the first sentence always gets deleted. I'll say, "Hey everybody, welcome to the show," blah blah, blah. or I'll get the cold open, back in the day of whatever, blah 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 blah. Right? I go into it. Chances are I'm not in the mode yet. I have to delete it. I start over. But what I do is I record and I turn on the recording, and I'm recording in the multi-track session in the Adobe program specifically on that one channel with everything else already laid out. And then I start talking, and I talk, and I talk. And when I get to a place where I don't know what to say, or where I feel like the last thing I said was really dumb or could have been said better, I stop. I delete that section. I go back, start back where I want to, hit record again, and then begin talking again. So what I do is I edit and record at the same time. And I don't think this is a very common method, but what that allows me to do is to know exactly what I'm saying and how it's going to sound, because I can play back every cut as I make it. Does this flow well? Did I cut out the ums and the ands? Whatever else I needed to do. Did I leave room for people to react to that thought because I specifically wanted empty space there? Do I sound like I'm enunciating? Do I sound like I just had a cold drink and now my tongue isn't working right, or I need to swallow? Like those kinds of things. Sometimes I leave that stuff in because I feel like on some level you have to sound like a natural human being, not a robot all the time. And then I'll go through the episode. I'll put all that stuff in. I'll edit in the section for the middle where there's like the ad break. I will add in the last section, and the last section takes way less editing. I'm not as careful with, you guys know, you've listened to the show. The main content, I try to be very careful. I try to enunciate. I try to speak in a way that allows you to think and go with me on this trip, like that. But when I get to the, hey, thanks everybody for the blah, 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 I just kind of go through it and I just talk to you like you're my friend, because you are. And I get through that stuff and then finish it. And I have that stuff up on my screen. Who are my new patrons? What are the new reviews? Is there any other news that I want to talk about? It's all right there already. I talk through that stuff. I edit. I cut that. I put the ender. I do the funny little thing I'm going to do at the end, depending on the show, and I'm done. I can record a 30-minute episode of the Elder Scrolls Lorecast or the Fallout Lorecast in less than an hour. Boom. Start to finish. Boom. Done. Then I have to take it and put it up on the different platforms, on Anchor and then also on Patreon, and I have to make sure it works for those. And then I have to do the social media stuff and all the other things that are involved. But the actual creation of a show can be done if you add in some of the research in less than an hour and a half. And part of that is drawing from my own knowledge. Part of that is knowing exactly what I'm looking for and having done this for a while. But it actually can happen that fast. And it's because I've done it a lot. And it wasn't always that fast. But I've gotten better and better and better. And the other thing is, I spend a lot of time not at my computer, not researching, thinking about these things. When I'm in the shower, when I'm riding in the car, I'm constantly thinking about, okay, what is the next episode going to be about? What would be a really cool perspective on this? What does this make me ask questions about? How would this affect other people than me? Like, what is the moral quandary here? Those kinds of things. Then I can work those things into the show because I've already digested them. They're already in my brain. So, all right, let's get back to some of these other things. Lincoln's asking about the Blue Yeti. The Blue Yeti is totally great. That's how I started podcasting. Totally good. Absolutely fine. In fact, it picks up certain tones in voices, especially if you talk about 3 inches away, where the bass response starts to rise a little bit. And make sure you have a pop filter. That it sounds really, really good. The only problem is if you have an echoey room, you've got dogs running around the house, you even have a fan next to your computer, it's going to pick that up as well. So you're going to have to edit that stuff out. You have to noise remove it, or just find a closet. Really, if you have a closet that you can put a chair in with the Blue Yeti and a laptop, great. Much better experience than being in a bigger room with echoey walls. And let's see, live stream, what recording software? Yeah, we talked about that already. Audacity is free. I would use that. And then I use Adobe Audition, and it'd be a little bit tough to pull it up right now, so I won't show that on the screen. Any other questions? I hope I answered some of your questions, guys. Anything else that you guys were wondering about? Otherwise, we'll wrap it up because we've gone an hour. I've answered a lot of stuff. This is a lot of stuff. The other thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to take these videos and I'm going to put them on YouTube. So I've got Robots Radio youtube.com/c/robots. I think it's just R0B0TS still. I don't think I can get it changed to Robots Radio. I need to, but I haven't been able to do that. But on my YouTube channel, go check that out. I think I have it in here. Is that it? It was just YT. Oops, typo. There you go. That link will take you to it too. Oh, Alexa decided to respond to me. So go check out the YouTube channel. There is a page on there called Podcast Professor, and I will be taking these episodes, but I'm also going to be, and I know I'm crazy, but I'm also going to be creating more specific episodes addressing a lot of these common questions. I want to build out an entire channel on YouTube that will take people who are interested in doing new video game podcasts or nerd podcasts or whatever into what I have learned in order to get you guys started and as successful as you can be as fast as possible. So there, yeah, the CI is definitely listening. They're learned all my podcasting hints at this point. So thank you, everybody. I think that's it for today. If you are interested in tuning into future episodes, this records live 1 p.m. Eastern on Sundays. Was it 10 a.m. Pacific on Sundays on twitch.tv/robotsradio. I'm also co-streaming on my YouTube channel, and this episode will go up as an actual podcast episode. But if you are interested in more of this content, go check out the YouTube, and there will be links in the show notes and all that. Thank you, everybody, for coming and hanging out and listening. I will probably be streaming later today, and I might even be streaming with my son in a little while, depending on what we decide to do this afternoon. So if you guys want to come hang out, we'll be doing some games and things. I try to stream every night around 9:30 Eastern, 6:30 Pacific. Some nights I'm just absolutely beat, and some nights I'm busy with other stuff. But you can always check in to see if I'm live in the evenings. And other than that, everybody else have a wonderful weekend, and stay tuned for next week. Hopefully I'll get some of the other hosts in and we can address another one of these issues and get you guys some more info. Oh, and if you've enjoyed the show, please share this with other people. Share this on social media, share it wherever you see it. Share it out there. This information is free for everybody, so make sure people get it. You are welcome, everyone. I will see you guys later. Have a wonderful rest of your Sunday. Talk to you guys.